So places like Berkeley or, Duke or some of these other big universities, a lot of their funding and resources go towards graduate programs.
Okay.
Whereas small colleges, all of it is focused on undergraduate students. So they are the ones who are the full energy of the whole institution,
True.
which means you're going to get a better education in many ways.
So true. In a way, are you advocating or are we saying that the best education is out there only? Every Indian kid, if given a chance, should go there? Or do you also
Definitely
think
not.
some kids can stay here and make a career here also? What is the best thing for those who can afford that and for those who can't afford that? What is your view?
People, even those who are going with jobs in hand there, think that the U.S. is going to be the land of milk and honey, but it's not that way. Just like everything looks good from afar, but when you're actually in it, there's a lot of aspects of home that you may, really feel alienated from, and I think that does take a big toll. Sure.
What all social life options are available to kids who go there? How does their social life look like? Do they make friends easily?
Yeah.
Do they get Indian food? Do they hang out with professors? What is their social? Do they get sometimes depressed because of higher education sometimes here? Hi everyone, if you ever wonder what kind of career options exist in the US, or if you are a parent of a teenage children like I am and you wonder where to send them for further education, then I'm sure this video is for you. We have a very special guest with us today who's gonna explain us step by step as to what are the various education and career options out there in the US. So let's get started. Hello Professor Radhakrishnan, thank you so much for finding time for this interaction today. I'm sure we are gonna learn a lot from you. Very welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's a privilege to be here.
Indeed, indeed. So let's start with trying to understand who you are as a person. You are a professor in Wellesley College in US. So what does that mean to be a professor there? What do you teach? What do you do?
Sure. So I am a professor of sociology. I joined Wellesley College in 2007 as an assistant professor, so I've been there for about 16 years.
Wow.
And that was my second job out of my PhD program, so I liked it. I've stayed all those times. I think Wellesley College is a really special place. I am part of the sociology department, but I am also part of the South Asia faculty because all of my research is based in India.
Okay.
So when they hired me not only to teach courses in sociology, but to also teach courses that would be cross-listed with South Asia faculty and to be able to collaborate in bringing South Asia-oriented programming to the campus.
You said Wellesley College is a special place. What makes it special? Where exactly is Wellesley?
Yeah.
What makes it special?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So when I got the Wellesley job, I have to say that I didn't know very much about the institution. You may have seen this Julia Roberts movie, The Mona Lisa Smile.
That's true.
So that's set at Wellesley College. And so most people, when they think of Wellesley, they think of that movie, which was set in the 1950s. There's some conversation or controversy whether that's actually an accurate depiction of Wellesley at that time, but it is a women's college, or a historically women's college. These days we have people of all gender identities who attend Wellesley College, and I can talk a little bit more about why that's the case in a moment. But some famous alums that you may know: Hillary Clinton graduated from Wellesley College in 1969, and Madeleine Albright, who was the first female Secretary of State of the United States, also graduated from Wellesley College.
But you have not taught Hillary Clinton.
No, she's way before my time. So she was there. She graduated in 1969.
Got it.
And was famously quite a troublemaker on campus when she was there. She definitely, turned heads, made an impact on the college while she was there.
Well, all famous people are.
Exactly. So that spirit of civic engagement, of campus engagement, of learning how to be a good citizen is very much encouraged at Wellesley. I think it's not a coincidence that one institution has produced two female secretaries of state. I think there's only been one other one in the United States.
Okay.
So, and many other illustrious names that you would recognize in the fields of journalism, art, filmmaking have graduated from this college. So So the alumni network is something that makes it very special. People who attend Wellesley or who are faculty at Wellesley feel that you can go anywhere in the world and say, I need something, and the Wellesley network will come and help you. So there's amazing examples of this that happen all the time.
Hello, I forgot my bag, and
exactly, that actually happens. They have a Facebook page where you can say, bat signal, Wellesley bat signal, I left my iPad in, the Iowa City airport. Can someone ship it to me? Gate 5, Terminal 3. And within 2 minutes, you can see that the whole conversation is resolved. So there's really this sense of worldwide solidarity. Now, it was the case in the 90s that the majority of the Wellesley student body came from the U.S., but that's really changed. Maybe it's still the majority, but we have students from 80 countries who attend Wellesley and from all 50 states. So it really is a culturally diverse place. It's changed. When I first started teaching there, most of my students were white American students. Occasionally, I would have some immigrant kids or from some students of color. That has completely changed. So I did not join the academy thinking that I am going to be a woman of color scholar. I didn't even really think about that, I wasn't aware enough. I wasn't exposed to those kinds of issues. But when I arrived at Wellesley, I found that, students who were taking my classes, they wanted to learn from a woman of color, right? That's the term that's used in the U.S. for basically folks who come from another ethnic background and don't identify as white American. And so that's been a really interesting position because I didn't necessarily go into academia thinking, I'm going to represent this type of experience. Right. But then I started realizing that my presence in front of the classroom actually meant a lot to the students who were in my classroom. Whoa. So I teach courses around globalization, intersectionality, race, colonialism, nationalism. So a variety of my research interests are really around gender and finance, development, and globalization. So but then they allowed me a lot of latitude. So I don't only teach, also at a small liberal arts college, you have to teach beyond your research expertise. That's so you don't just teach really narrowly. And there's some advantages to that. So I've taught a racial regimes class, for example, that I took a couple of courses in graduate school, didn't really pursue it as a research area. However, I have now been teaching that course for 14 years, and it's one of the flagship courses in our department. So, and I didn't know that would be my thing. So Wellesley allows that type of faculty development as well. There's about 300 faculty members who are quite a large faculty for about 2,200 students. And the students are very special. It's a highly selective college, and the folks who come there come from a wider variety of class and cultural backgrounds than you might think of, and international as well. We do have I've started seeing a number of Indian students coming as international students to study at Wellesley, and they really are very well networked with one another. They are able to get an international student kind of orientation, as well as be integrated with the rest of the campus as well.
Wow, that's really interesting, Smitha. So I'm now going to talk to you as a parent of a teenage kid, and I'm sometimes wondering, what is in it for her in the US? Should I keep her here? Should I send her there? This is a question which I believe might be bothering many, many parents like me and the kids themselves.
Yeah.
So we really want a detailed perspective from you, as in what do the options exist for kids there, and should they go there or should they rather stay here?
So the last question I can't answer because I think it's a very personal decision. Okay. And there are very good reasons to maybe do an undergrad education in India where it's cheaper and more affordable, and maybe think about graduate school in the US if that's an option, or vice versa. But having said that I do think you can there's many possible paths that will work for many people. Although I'm very critical of the US in many ways, I think the higher education system in the US is really world-class and hard to beat.
Okay.
And that's because there is a very wide variety of institutions. So, I have a teenage kid too. And I'm already hearing parents get stressed about the college process there.
That's true.
And the thing that I know as a faculty member is that there are thousands of institutions where your kid is going to get not just a good education, an excellent education.
Oh, is it?
Because the faculty are so highly trained, the curriculums have been developed over a long period of time, that you're going to get pretty incredible resources, not just at, we only think of Harvard or Yale or Berkeley or just a handful of places, but in fact, at many schools that you've never heard of, you're going to get world-class faculty, amazing facilities, lots of support, and they may be in places that you haven't heard of, like Wisconsin or Iowa or Ohio. They're, where you're going to get a really world-class education, either at the undergrad or at the grad level. So maybe I'll talk about each of those options. So at the undergraduate level, you really have two options. You have a large university or a small liberal arts college.
Okay.
And those are quite different from one another. There are, I think, similar parallel options in India, but I don't know as much about the differences of those, but I can tell you about the differences between those two in the US.
Yeah, we want to hear.
Yeah. So I attended a large public school as an undergraduate, which was UC Berkeley. And, when I was applying to college, and I always say this, my father asked me, okay, Smitha, but when you're thinking about college, do you want to be a big fish in a small pond, or do you want to be a small itty-bitty fish in an ocean?
Okay.
Right? And I was a curious kid, I was a good student, I thought very carefully about that, and I said, I want to be in the ocean. I want to be a small fish in the ocean. Okay. And for me, UC Berkeley was that ocean. Sure. The fact that I could be in an enormous library and that I could never, exhaust the knowledge that was in that library.
True.
I spent most of my time there because I was that kind of a student.
Wow.
So just that feeling of the vastness of it, there's a parking lot for Nobel laureates at UC Berkeley, right? Which means there's that many of them, right?
Doesn't that become overwhelming at times?
It is overwhelming at times. So that's why I say that big ocean feeling is not for everybody.
Yeah.
For me, I didn't mind the smallness because I was happy to get whatever I did. I was a very self-motivated student, and without too much guidance, I was able to carve a path of my very own within this vast kind of space. Undergraduate courses like Introduction to Econ or Introduction to Chemistry might have 300 or 500 or 700 students, and you might just have a small section with a teaching assistant or a graduate student instructor where you get some one-on-one, but you might never speak to the instructor because it's a large class and you're learning from world-class faculty who are very busy doing their research and other things. Right. And increasingly, those universities have started basically transferring teaching responsibilities to not all the faculty have PhDs, but not permanent faculty, but temporary faculty, which is a larger structural problem that's going on in the U.S. Nonetheless, the variety of courses you're going to get at a large university, the variety of students, lots and lots of people, and so I do think that for a lot of people, that experience is extremely enriching. For me personally, I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. When I went to UC Berkeley, I saw other Indian American kids, lots of them, for the first time, right? I mean, there were some Indian kids in Phoenix. I knew most of them. Going to Berkeley and seeing so many other Indian kids who, like me, were born and brought up in the U.S. was a revelation. Seeing lots of other Asian Americans from other parts whose families were from other parts of Asia, that was a revelation. The kind of political and social kind of awakening that I was able to have at Berkeley is not something I could have gotten, if I had stayed, for example, in-state in Arizona.
Makes sense. Very, very interesting.
Yeah. So I think that type of, and you're going to see differences if you go to a Midwestern campus. Maybe there'll be a little bit less diversity. Not so much that even those campuses have become quite diverse in terms of the composition of the students now.
But how would a student sitting in Delhi or Mumbai or even a smaller town like Chandigarh or Kashipur determine whether they will apply to a Midwestern university as you're talking about, or to a Harvard or to a Wellesley? How do they determine?
I think that's difficult to say, and there are probably local consultants that can help you with that. But I think the bigger message I would want to get across is that even if it's not a school that you've heard of, it might have a lot to offer.
Okay.
Right? So don't blindly
to Harvard.
apply only only to those 10 schools that you've heard of that have all the accolades. I have a nephew who attends the University of Iowa, which is actually a private school, and he has gotten into a subfield of computer science that only like a few professors in the world know of, right? And he's gotten like a totally world-class education. He was declined from a couple of other programs, but what he's made out of the University of Iowa is really something very special, right? He came from India. So, don't have those blinders on. Think about what your interests are and what is it that a particular program might be able to offer you in terms of resources and in terms of faculty.
Possibly apply to a range of universities.
A range of places.
Some big and some small.
Yes. So I'm coming to that now, the small liberal arts college, which is where I ended up with in Wellesley, is a little bit different paradigm of teaching.
How exactly and what exactly is a typical liberal art college like?
Yeah, so a liberal arts college is a much smaller scale. So instead, UC Berkeley has 30,000, 35,000 students. ASU, which was an institution many of my friends attended, has 50,000 students, right? So you're talking about a city, right? A small city. Wellesley has 2,000 students, right? That's small, right? Carnegie Mellon is somewhere in the middle. There's 10,000 or 15. Actually, I'm not sure. Maybe there's a few more. They have a larger graduate program. So the size makes a difference because when you are at a smaller place, you have much more direct interaction with faculty.
Right.
So unlike the Berkeley, the large university model that I described to you, where you're mostly going to be interacting with the graduate student instructor, at a small college, you're actually going to talk to the students. So I talk to my students one-on-one, right, in all my classes. So every student that I don't have any classes that are larger than 25 students.
So this is Department of Sociology.
Sociology. But even in computer science, where we have a lot of students who are signed up in Wellesley, they actually get one-on-one contact with their faculty. They might co-author papers with them. They might be able to work on very specific specialized skills, do an independent study with an award-winning scholar. Those kinds of things are possible at small places that are not possible at a large place.
Okay, let's say a student applies straight away in sociology department in Wellesley College, in your university. What exactly is the curriculum and the selection process and the career options that emerge out of this entire study?
Sure. So Wellesley you don't apply to a department. You expressed interest in a few different departments, and they very much believe in you. The way the liberal arts is structured is you have to take a couple of sciences. You have to take mathematics. You have to take, even if you hate it, you have to fulfill those requirements. You have to take an English class. You have to take a social science class. There's a whole bunch you have to take a quantitative reasoning class. Separate from math. So the idea is that they actually encourage you in your first year to take a course that you thought you would never take before. So people might discover astronomy, or they might discover, microbiology that they never knew about, right?
So they just take what they like to study.
You go and look at the course descriptions, and if a course inspires you, you can take it, and it's going to get credit. It's going to expand your horizons. Many people who come to me and end up majoring in sociology had never heard of sociology growing up. They didn't know what it was, but they took an intro class, or someone said, "Oh, you should take a class with this professor," and they got it, right? Some kind of a light bulb went on, and they sank in. People, speaking for sociology specifically, but this is true for economics, for political science, it pairs well with other kinds of fields. Sociology is the study of the interface between the individual and society.
That's right.
So you start to understand social structures like race, class, gender, sexuality, age, disability, right? And you start to think about society in a critical way and your connection to it. Increasingly, I've been having students do double majors like sociology and economics.
But first year they don't come in sociology.
No,
they choose it in the second year.
They can take it. They can take sociology their first semester as an introductory course, and then maybe they never take another social class in their life, or they could continue on if they choose to.
Doing more courses.
Yes. So it's
but
really
it's a
left
3
up
years
to them.
program.
It's 4 years.
even the undergrad?
Undergrad is
a
4
4-year
years.
program.
Yes, most programs are actually all undergraduate degrees are 4 years.
And in the year they walk out with a BA.
BA, yeah,
BA.
a BA. But it could have any major. So that's just because it's a liberal arts college, you get the BA. But we have students finishing with computer science degrees or history degrees, and it's all.
That's
BA.
also a BA.
It's all BA.
Yeah.
But
with the computer.
that difference doesn't matter so much.
That would be similar to an engineering in computer science.
Yeah, computer science, well, we have engineering also. That's a separate kind of thing because we have some tie-ups with the local engineering college, so you can't actually major in engineering.
So the admission process for that would be different.
No, it's all the same.
All the same.
One admissions committee.
That's
decides.
very interesting, actually.
Yes.
And in one lot, you choose 2,000 students that you want.
Well, 2,000 across 4 years. So each incoming class is about 800 or so students, between 7 and 800
okay.
students.
That's a lesser number.
Right, plus 4, right? Because it's 4 there across 4 years, you have 2,200 students.
And how many of them would be from India then? I'm curious to know.
I would say probably about 5 to 10% of the student body comes from India. At any given time, it goes up and down. There was one year where I definitely would have 5 to 10 students in in my classes. Some years I don't have any, and then some years I have a lot. So it's hard to tell over time.
And
also, the students from India may not take my sociology class. So
they are more technology
they might be in the
guys.
science. They might be locked away in the science center. We have a beautiful science center. Maybe they come there and they don't ever come to my building.
That's true.
I do have students who do make the trek over and take my classes, and and many of them I end up having long-term relationships with. So.
That's incredible. So about 20 to 50 students coming to your university from India.
I think that's a good estimate. Yeah.
And what do you look for? You look for GMAT or SAT, or what exactly is your...
So the admissions criteria is set by an admissions committee yearly. It's not a graduate program, it's an undergraduate school. That's the other special thing about small liberal arts colleges. They are completely focused on undergraduate education. So places like Berkeley or, Duke or some of these other big universities, a lot of their funding and resources go towards graduate programs.
Okay.
Whereas small colleges, all of it is focused on undergraduate students. So they are the ones who are the full energy of the whole institution, which means you're going to get a better education in many ways,
so true.
And sometimes I feel, going back to that small fish, big fish thing, that Wellesley, you kind of get both. You can have that big fish in a small pond feeling because you know everyone, but because of all the linkages to the outer world, access to internships, personal relationships, that you can have that,
you
big
can
ocean
feel small
feeling.
should you want
yes,
to.
you can feel the ocean if you feel that, and you get a lot more handheld guidance, I would say.
That's interesting. And continuing with the final question of the series, so what about placements and careers after they graduate from your university as a BA, let's say from sociology or any other department?
Yeah, so our sociology students go on, and so I'll talk about careers in graduate school. So graduate school, a lot of them go to law school, is very popular. We do have a few who go on to medical school. Increasingly, medical schools in the US actually require students to take some sociology courses. So I've been writing more med school recommendations in recent years.
Okay.
So those are definitely, and legal path, people go to law school and become, labor lawyers, human rights lawyers, all the way up to corporate mergers and acquisitions.
Right.
Apart from that, I've had students go into advertising, work in the NGO sector, nonprofit kind of stuff. Some students become activists of various kinds and then end up joining government in some kind of a government service, policy making. Many people go into public policy kind of work or public health work. I'm now having a lot of students, we have a new data science major, and I think this is true around the country. So I have a lot of students who are taking on sociology and data science together, and then they can kind of go to a company, right, and really be able to manipulate data in a really meaningful way that would be helpful for corporations as well. So as far as where they go, I mean, it really depends on their family situation, their immigration status. If they happen to be U.S. citizens because their parents previously lived in the U.S., it's much easier for them to make a career in the U.S. Even if they come back to India, I think the big thing that they bring back to India that's unique perhaps from other people who end up doing their undergrad here is they really learn to speak their mind in a very forceful, clear way, and express opinions about things. There's a level of interaction that's required in undergraduate classrooms in the US, especially if you take a social science or a humanities, even if you don't major in it, if you just take a few courses, you can't just sit quietly in one corner and do great in college.
That's right.
You can't.
That's right.
You can't just study it up, memorize everything, write the exam, and do great. You cannot.
Right.
So you are encouraged
talk to people, make networks, make friends, learn communication skills.
Those communication skills, and we practice them. So in my classroom, we do so many different exercises that are not just about speaking, but also about building good relationships with your peers. Those who may be a little bit shy, may come from a disadvantaged background, may feel uncomfortable sharing. How is it that you make sure that you give them space so that they can also make their contribution?
That is true.
So those are skills that are going to serve you in many different parts of life, and also in if you come back to India and decide to pursue a career there, that edge in terms of that capacity for being able to speak your mind, articulate your ideas in a clear way,
that all goes with you lifelong.
That stays with you. That really does stay with you, and I think then you end up becoming the person that people look to for leadership and vision going forward.
Awesome.
So that's, I think, something that's quite special that I've seen a lot of students from India who have come from Mumbai or Delhi and who come to Wellesley. I do see them come out of their shell over time and become much more confident, come in saying, this is really hard, I'm not sure if I can do this, and then by the end of even one semester be quite confident about talking about sensitive topics, sharing and expressing their views. And I've just last semester I had a student in an intro whose elder sibling, she's from Mumbai, her elder sibling had taken my class 6 or 7 years ago, and then she ended up also going to Wellesley like her older sister.
Wow.
And she took
India.
From India.
Okay, awesome.
From Bombay. And so I thought she looked a little familiar, but I said, no, there's no way I could know a first-year student.
Okay.
And then she came and she said, my older sister took your class, and she still talks about your class. So but I don't know if I can handle it. Like the first 2 days, it's like very overwhelming. I can't be intellectual. I can't do theory. I can't do these things. And I said, you know what? You are awesome. Like hang in there. You're going to be fine. And she ended up doing really well in the class and really enjoying it.
Right.
So she had the background and the training, the confidence was missing, and once we practiced that, she became very good at expressing that.
Wow, this was really insightful. This was interesting. You explained the whole process of admissions to careers. But my heart is still roaming around and thinking, so in a way, are you advocating or are we saying that the best education is out there only? Every Indian kid, if given a chance, should go there? Or do you also think some kids can stay here and make a career here also? What is the best thing for those who can afford that and for those who can't afford that? What is your view?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm definitely not here to advocate that everyone should try to go to the U.S.
Oh,
at all.
it?
Not at all.
Okay.
I think that any time that you leave your home and your country of origin and go somewhere else, there is some suffering that comes along with it. I know there's suffering here too.
Right.
I'm well aware. But if you can see yourself and your family making a good life, a life that you want, a life that's aligned with your values here in India, then I don't think there's any reason to leave. And I think that, we can travel, we can take courses, and now there's online, learning opportunities where you can get some of these things. And I think that each family has to decide for themselves what they want to go through.
Okay.
Life in the U.S. for immigrants is not as rosy as it appears from the outside.
Is it?
It's quite difficult. So I was born there, and my parents migrated there 50 years ago.
Right.
When there were relatively few Indian immigrants. So all migration from India was banned in the U.S. until 1965. So that's why you only see the majority of, although there were Indians prior to that, the majority that we think of now are the educated ones who were let in after 1965. So my parents immigrated at that time. Those who are coming now, yes, there are many, 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 but they come as tech workers, they come as nurses, they come for education, and it's the visa process and everything is very difficult. So it's actually difficult to stay there long term and become a citizen. It's not a simple thing that if you just stay there, work hard, then somehow you'll become a citizen. There are quite a few restrictions. There's quite a few barriers.
Not every kid that will do a BA with you in sociology department from India will get a job there?
No, I think it's hard. I think it's pretty hard. I think it's pretty difficult. I don't think, I think people, even those who are going with jobs in hand there, think that the U.S. is going to be the land of milk and honey, but it's not that way, just like everything looks good from afar, but when you're actually in it, there's a lot of aspects of home that you may, really feel alienated from, and I think that does take a big toll. That said, there are amazing, rich Indian communities there in the U.S. that weren't there 30 or 40 or 50 years ago. I have a cousin who came to the U.S. recently as a graduate student. She was born in the U.S., but then her parents brought her, they moved back to India. She did her undergraduate here, worked for a couple of years, and then went to a graduate program in the U.S., a top-notch graduate program. And she feels like it's an extension of life in Bangalore. Because she has all of her friends there. So many people she knows got into the same program. She keeps in touch with everybody on WhatsApp and on social media. There was basically no cultural transition for her. She gets the food that she wants. She has the friends that she wants, right? And she has all the opportunities of this world-class education that are, quite amazing. But she also had the advantage, she already had U.S. citizenship, right? Because her parents lived there before.
But those who are going from scratch from here may not have those advantages.
May not have those advantages. So I think to the extent that you can afford it and take advantage of the educational opportunity, I think they can be amazing. But I think it's also really important not to have some kind of illusion that is going to, lead you to some kind of a life that you might see in the movies or other things. I think also, at least for people at the top in India, life seems to be very good.
Nice. Yeah, that I agree.
And I don't know what your values are, but it depends on each family. For me, I think one of the things, just speaking very personally here, I grew up as a child of immigrants in the U.S. So that means that for me, I've always been both an insider and an outsider.
True.
Right? So I don't know, when I'm in India, I'm an outsider in a different way. Maybe I look like everybody else, but everybody knows that, okay, she's not from here. Now, where are you really from?
Right.
And when I'm in the U.S., I'm not a white person, so everyone knows I'm from somewhere else. Right? So I have a dual identity that I've learned to live with, and I've learned to make something out of it. But that's not an easy process.
Either.
I don't think it comes easily to everybody. I think it's a struggle. I've also struggled to figure that out. And I'm here in India my whole career has been built on research in India. Why? Because I'm choosing not to have my research base be in the US, right? So I think it's complicated, it's individual, but I definitely wouldn't want anyone who's watching this to have illusions that somehow, an expensive US education is going to lead to US citizenship. I don't think US citizenship is an end in itself, right? You really want to think about, what is the kind of life that I want to lead? Do I want to lead a life that is oriented towards personal accumulation and wealth? That may be the most important thing for some people. Do I want to lead a life where I am, creating something that wasn't there before to at least leave a lasting imprint? Okay, well, what would I need to do that? Do I need a certain kind of education, exposure, experience? Do I want to be involved in making the world a better place? So where would I need to go to do that? So I really think that our decisions about education should be values-driven and not place-driven.
Okay, please allow me to summarize this for 30 seconds.
Sure.
So what I understood is that if our kids go there for good quality education, get some international exposure, a little more confidence to talk to people openly.
Yes.
That's a great goal by itself, and they come back here or stay there is a second chapter.
I think that's
But that
true.
does not mean that similar or good quality education cannot happen in India.
Absolutely.
The same thing can happen here.
I would agree with that. Yes, I think that's a great summary.
Okay, awesome. That's amazing. One more question to you.
Sure.
What all social life options are available to kids who go there? How does their social life look like? Do they make friends easily?
Yeah.
Do they get Indian food? Do they hang out with professors? What is their social? Do they get sometimes depressed because of higher education? Sometimes here in higher universities there are cases of depression and stress and loneliness. What's life there?
Absolutely. No, I think that mental health is an issue for everyone, especially since COVID. There's been a lot of attention towards that. I think young people across the world struggle with that. That said, I think that there is a little bit less overt pressure, at least in the U.S. university context, to perform because it's not exam driven, it's not numerical in the same way. So you can be excellent in many areas and you can carve your own path. So that emphasis on numbers and particular kinds of marks, and that I see a lot of kind of pressure and anxiety around that in India, that I don't think is there in the same way. That kind of competitiveness, neck-to-neck competitiveness, I don't see that in the U.S. That's not to say that there aren't mental health struggles there. I have a lot of students who have mental health struggles, and that's kind of become a feature of being a young person in the world today. So I don't know if I can blame, Wellesley or the U.S. or college for that, but, there's a lot of different factors
and that happens
affected.
a lot in India also.
It happens in India also. It's probably underdiagnosed. People are still learning to take that seriously as an aspect of health. So there, I think when you do have mental health struggles, there's more support. As far as your other questions about, Indian khana and friends and things, I do think that it depends on where you are in the country. It's a big country. So you're going to have different options in Atlanta and Los Angeles versus, if you're in
New York.
New York, those are all big places where you're going to have plenty of Indian folks to hang out with. But if you're in a really small town in Idaho or like Oregon, maybe there'll be a few Indian people there, but not necessarily so many. Most of the big cities in the U.S., so whether you're talking about Atlanta or Los Angeles or New York, you're going to find a huge Indian community, and not just Indian community, your regional, preferences. If you want your, Gujarati Garba, you want to be with the Gujarati folks. Or,
even that you get.
That also you get. I grew up in Phoenix, which when I was growing up, there was very few Indians there, and every Indian that came, we used to have them over for dinner. And by the time I graduated high school, there was Punjabi Association, Gujarati Association, Kannada Association, Tamil Association, and they all had their own functions and things like that.
Awesome.
I think one of the opportunities that you have in the U.S. in terms of social interaction that exists, although not all Indian immigrants take advantage of it, is that you can meet people who are not Indian who may share an interest with you, right? So you might have a group of people that you play tennis with, or that you go to art museums with, or that you have some kind of interest in common with, right? And you might learn more about their lives and interact with them that would, just give you a different perspective. So for me, I have my academic friends who are involved in academia. We may have some academic interests in common, but we don't really have common backgrounds. I'm a dancer, so I'm a classical Indian dancer, so all my dance friends are Indian, and they're kind of the core of my Indian community. But that's because I've developed an interest that I support, and I have other people who share that interest. So we have that in common. So I think it's possible to make different communities with different communities of interest, and you would do that anyway in any Indian city. But I think in the U.S., it's just the possibility of meeting people from a lot of other backgrounds while you explore your interests is something that exists.
And possibly when you are away from your country, you look for more stronger bonding with some people. And possibly I've seen people celebrating some of the festivals which they would not otherwise care about when they are here in India.
I think that's very true. And I think that changes over the generations. When I was growing up, we always celebrated Diwali and Pongal, we're South Indian, and all these major Krishna Janmashtami and, many things. But I have to say that for myself now, as a working professional who's just trying to get through the week, I am not as attentive about those festivals. If there's a function happening and someone invites me, then I'll very happily go. but to arrange something in my own home now, cook an Indian sweet, get everything together, it's not realistic, you know? And I also don't feel inspired. But when I'm in India and those things are happening, I feel very excited.
Awesome.
So.
Okay, it was such amazing interaction and so much to learn from you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. You were so kind and generous with your questions as well as your responses.
And you were kind about answering all the questions.
Thank you.
So folks, I hope you learned a lot from the interactions that we had with Professor Radhakrishnan just now. She talked a lot about interesting career options, education options that exist in US, but at the same time, she tells that we don't necessarily have to be very overwhelmed about going to US. That's not the end of road. There are interesting options available out here also. So take a very calculated decision, take your time and see what works best for you. Have a wonderful life. Keep watching. God bless.